The silver wraith sliced through the dark space, its engines humming steadily. The distant stars glimmered coldly as the ship approached the edge of a dangerous system, the last stop before safety. Elias sat in the cockpit, eyes sharp on the scanner. Beside him, Leora stood quietly, her golden eyes bright with determination. "Are they close?" Elias asked, his voice low. Leora nodded. "The warlord's fleet is near. They want me. They want the bond to be broken." Elias clenched his jaw. "Not on my watch." The last days had changed everything. What began as a strange purchase at an alien market had become a binding promise, a fight for survival, and something more. A partnership neither had expected. The enemy fleet emerged from behind an asteroid belt, sleek warships bristling with weapons. Their leader's flagship was larger, painted black with red markings, a symbol of fear across the quadrant. "Ready the defenses," Elias said firmly. "This is it." Leora closed her eyes briefly, drawing deep on the energy within her. When she opened them, the soft golden glow returned, stronger than ever. "As long as we stand together, they cannot break us," she said. The battle erupted. Laser fire tore through space, and explosions lit the void. The silver wraith weaved through the enemy fleet, shields pulsing under the assault. Elias piloted with skill born of years on the edge, dodging missiles and blasting return fire. Leora stood at the energy console, pouring her power into the ship's defenses. Her hands glowed brighter with every wave of energy she released. One by one, enemy ships fell to their combined efforts. Suddenly, the flagship targeted them directly. Elias tensed as massive beams struck the wraith, shaking the ship. "Violently! Leora!" he shouted. She took a deep breath, raising both hands. Golden light exploded outward, forming a shimmering shield around the ship. "It will hold," she said, voice steady but strained. The flagship closed in, preparing to ram. Elias gritted his teeth and dove toward an asteroid field, weaving sharply between rocks. Leora's energy shield flickered, but held. With a roar, the flagship smashed into an asteroid instead, its hull cracking and sparks flying. The enemy flagship slowed, crippled, but not destroyed. Elias saw his chance. He aimed the ship's weapons and fired a barrage of missiles and laser fire directly at the flagship. Leora channeled all her remaining energy into the ship's core systems, boosting power to the weapons. The flagship exploded in a blinding flash. The rest of the fleet broke formation and fled. The silver wraith floated in silence as the adrenaline faded. Elias looked at Leora, awe and gratitude in his eyes. "You saved us." "No," she said softly. "We saved each other." For the first time, Elias reached out and took her hand. "You are no longer just my bondmate," he said quietly. "You are my partner, my equal." Leora smiled, the joy shining in her eyes. Then, we faced the future, together. The stars outside stretched endlessly. A new journey was beginning. One not of chains, but of choice, trust, and strength. Together, they would face whatever the galaxy sent their way. The silver wraith floated silently in orbit around a small, rocky moon. Its surface was cracked and barren, but the shadow it cast was long, hiding the ship from prying eyes. Inside the ship, the air was thick with tension. Elias stood near the window, staring out at the cold, empty space. Leora sat calmly on a small bench, her golden eyes fixed on him. The soft glow from her hair bathed the room in gentle light. After days of running, hiding, and fighting, Elias knew he had to understand everything about the strange bond that tied them together. "Leora," he said quietly, "I need to know the truth." She looked up at him, calm and steady. "You want to understand the bond, to know what it means for us." He nodded. "Yes, because I don't want to hurt you. I don't want to be a mistake." Her smile was warm. "You are no mistake." She stood and came closer, her hand reaching out to rest lightly on his arm. "In my culture," she began, "the word you heard, love slave, is a poor translation. It does not mean what it means to humans." Elias listened closely. "On Shaylin, every adult must join in a life oath bond. It is a sacred promise, a joining of two souls in loyalty, protection, and partnership. The bond is made by exchange, an offering given and an acceptance received. This is the right." She paused, her gaze steady. "When you bought me, you unknowingly accepted the right. You became my chosen, my equal, not my owner." Elias thought about the moment at the market, the way she smiled, the way she called him her chosen. "So, you belong to me, but not as property?" "Exactly," she said softly. "We are partners, in battle, in life, and in heart." He swallowed, hard. "And what if I don't want this bond?" Her eyes searched his. "You already have it. The bond is not broken by doubt or fear. It is strengthened by trust." Elias felt a sudden weight settle on him. This was no simple relationship, it was a lifetime promise. Suddenly, the ship's alarm blared. "Contact!" Elias shouted, rushing to the controls. Leora was already at his side, her hands glowing faintly as she interfaced with the ship's systems. "Enemy ships incoming," she said. "They have found us." Elias slammed the ship into emergency power. The Silver Wraith shuddered, engines roaring as they jumped from orbit into open space. Outside the viewport, 3 sleek ships appeared, their hulls gleaming with deadly intent. "They want you," Elias said grimly. "And they want to make sure I don't get in their way." Leora's expression hardened. "Then we fight, together." The battle was fierce. Energy bolts lit the blackness as the Wraith twisted and darted, dodging the enemy's fire. Elias's hands were steady on the controls, but it was Leora who made the difference. With a low chant in her language, she focused golden energy into the ship's shields, reinforcing them as they took hit after hit. "Keep us steady," she urged. "I will hold the barrier." Elias nodded, trust growing between them with every second. The enemy ships tried to flank them, but Elias anticipated their moves, spinning the ship through a maze of debris. Then, one of the enemy ships broke formation and charged directly. Elias fired all weapons at it. The blasts tore into its hull, but the ship stayed on course, aiming to ram the Wraith. "Brace!" Elias shouted. At the last second, Leora extended her hands toward the approaching ship. A wave of golden light surged outward, striking the enemy vessel. It exploded in a burst of fire, scattering debris across the void. Breathing heavily, Elias turned to Leora. "You're amazing." She smiled, but her eyes showed fatigue. "I can only hold this power for so long. Then we have to end this." "Quickly," Elias said, eyes scanning the remaining ships. They worked as one. Elias piloted the ship with skill, weaving through the enemy attacks, while Leora channeled energy to protect and strike. At last, the 2 remaining ships turned away, damaged and beaten. Elias sighed in relief. "They're retreating." Leora nodded, her glowing energy fading. As the ship settled into calm, Elias turned to her. "I'm sorry I didn't understand before. I didn't know the bond meant so much." "You do now," she said softly. "And that is enough." Elias's eyes met hers. "I want to honor it, honor you." Her hand found his again, fingers entwining. "Then we move forward," Leora said. "Together." Later, in the quiet of the ship, Elias sat alone, thinking. The bond was no longer a mystery. It was real, binding their fates. He knew dangers, lay ahead, but with Leora by his side, he felt ready. For the first time in a long time, hope warmed his heart. The silver wraith cut through deep space, her hull glinting faintly in the light of a distant sun. Inside, the hum of the engines was steady and calm. For now. Elias sat in the cockpit, sipping from a metal mug of bitter coffee. Leora stood beside him, eyes scanning the radar screen. She had barely left his side since they'd escaped the asteroid field 2 days ago. Clear skies, Elias muttered, though in space there were no skies, just black, stars, and trouble waiting behind them. Leora's golden eyes flicked toward him. For now, Elias smirked. You always this optimistic? I am realistic, she said softly. Hunters don't give up, especially when they know the value of their target. That last word made him frown. Value. Right. Care to explain why they're so determined to get you? Leora hesitated. I will tell you. Soon. Elias groaned. You've been saying that since we met. Her lips curved slightly. And yet, you still keep me here. Maybe because you keep saving my life, he muttered. They dropped out of FTL to refuel at a small trading post orbiting a dying moon. The station was little more than a ring of metal, with a few docking arms and a central hub. Not the kind of place you stayed in long. Elias and Leora walked the narrow corridors toward the supply office. The air smelled faintly of rust and engine oil. Alien crew members passed them, some glancing curiously at Leora. Too curiously. Elias noticed the way conversations quieted when they passed, the way eyes lingered. It put him on edge. Inside the supply office, an old station clerk scanned their payment. Fuel cells will be ready in an hour, he said. His gaze shifted to Leora. Not many Shaylin come through here. Leora's expression didn't change. Few of us remain. The clerk's eyes narrowed. And you're bonded to a human? Huh. Elias felt tension rising in the room. We're just here for fuel, he said, his voice flat. The clerk shrugged. Of course, just be careful. Folks talk. As they walked back toward the ship, Elias leaned close. People are looking at you like you're a bag of gold. Leora didn't slow her steps. Because to some, I am. The Shaylin were almost wiped out in the War of Cinders. Our bloodline is rare. To criminals and warlords, a Shaylin bondmate is a prize. Not just for our abilities, but for what we represent. Elias understood now. She wasn't just a curiosity. She was leverage. Whoever controlled her could claim a link to her peoples. Legacy, maybe even demand loyalty from the survivors. That's why they want you, he said grimly. Yes, she replied. And why you must keep me. They didn't get the chance to finish the conversation. Halfway back to the docking bay, 3 bulky figures stepped out from a side corridor. They wore dark armor, faces hidden behind plated masks. Blasters hung at their sides. One of them spoke, voice deep and metallic. The Shaylin girl comes with us. Elias stepped forward. Not happening. The masked alien tilted his head. You can't protect her from everyone, human. Sell her to us now and we might let you walk away. Elias's hand went to his sidearm. You want her? Come take her. The alien didn't wait. His blaster came up, but Leora moved faster. A wave of golden energy burst from her hands, knocking him into the wall. The other 2 drew weapons, but Elias fired first, his shots forcing them to dive for cover. Move! Elias barked. They sprinted down the corridor, blaster fire scorching the walls. Leora threw another wave of energy, toppling a stack of cargo crates to block the path. They dashed into the docking bay, slammed the Wraith's hatch shut, and blasted free from the station before the attackers could catch up. Safe in the cockpit, Elias's heart was still pounding. That was too close. It will happen again, Leora said calmly. And worse. Elias looked at her, trying to read her expression. She didn't seem scared, only certain. You've been dealing with this for a while, haven't you? Since I left my home world, she admitted. Everywhere I go, someone tries to claim me. That is why the right exists, to bind us to one who will fight with us. It is safety. Elias leaned back, exhaling slowly. Guess I signed up. For more than I thought. You chose, she said almost proudly. And now, we fight together. They stayed in open space for 2 days, avoiding trade routes. But even in the emptiness, trouble found them. It started with a distress signal, faint, crackling over the comms. A cargo hauler asking for help with a failing reactor. Elias hesitated, but Leora urged him to respond. They found the hauler drifting near a small asteroid cluster. No visible damage. No signs of a reactor breach. The moment Elias brought the Wraith close, 3 attack ships uncloaked from behind the asteroids. Trap! Elias shouted, pulling the ship into a sharp turn. The attackers opened fire, energy bolts slamming into the shields. Leora gripped the console, sending a golden surge into the ship's systems. Lights brightened, and the shields strengthened. I can hold them longer, she said through clenched teeth. But not forever. Elias dove between the asteroids, weaving through the narrow gaps while the enemy ships chased. A rock the size of a building spun past the viewport, missing them by meters. They're fast, Elias muttered. You are faster, Leora replied. Firmly, Elias spotted a tight crevice between 2 huge asteroids. Hold on! He rolled the Wraith and squeezed through, scraping paint but losing the attackers behind solid rock. Seconds later, they shot out into open space. The radar showed the pursuers breaking off. Elias finally let out the breath he'd been holding. That was close. Leora smiled faintly. That is why the bond works. We protect each other. Later, while repairing minor damage, Elias found Leora in the galley, brewing a strange, fragrant drink. What's that? He asked. Shaylin leaf tea, she said, pouring some into 2 cups. We drink it after battle. It calms the heart. He took a sip. It was warm, slightly sweet, and unlike anything he'd tasted before. You know, he said slowly, you've saved my life twice in the last 3 days. You've saved mine, she replied simply. It is what bondmates do. Elias studied her face. She was completely serious. This wasn't just words for her. This was the core of who she was, before. They could talk more. The comms beeped. An encrypted message came through. Elias opened it, and his blood ran cold. It was a bounty notice. Target, Leora of the Shaylin Reward, 500,000 credits, alive only. Attached was a still image of her standing beside him at the market. Elias looked at her. This changes things. She didn't flinch. It only means the hunters will be more desperate and more dangerous, Elias said grimly. Then we must be ready, she replied. That night, Elias lay awake in his cabin, listening to the soft hum of the ship and the quiet footsteps outside his door. Leora was on watch again. He realized something then. This wasn't just about rescuing her anymore. The fight was now his as much as hers, and maybe he didn't mind that. The Silver Wraith drifted away from Vera Station, her engines humming softly. Outside the cockpit windows, the stars stretched like frozen sparks, scattered across endless black. Elias sat in the pilot's chair, hands on the controls, eyes flicking, between the navigation screen and the scanners. Beside him, Leora sat in the co-pilot's seat, her glowing hair casting faint light on the dashboard. She hadn't stopped smiling since they'd left. Elias broke the silence. So, let's get this clear? You're not a prisoner anymore. You can go anywhere you want. I am where I want to be, Leora said simply. That's not what I mean, Elias said, rubbing his forehead. You don't owe me anything. I didn't buy you to keep you. I bought you to free you. Her golden eyes studied him with mild amusement. You speak as though freedom and being with you cannot be the same thing, Elias sighed. Because in my culture, buying someone is wrong. Owning another person is slavery. Slavery is cruel. She tilted her head. I know what slavery is. I have seen it in other species. What happened in that market was not slavery. It was the right. The right? Elias asked. Yes, she said, as though explaining something obvious. In my people's tradition, a life oath mate is chosen in a public place. The offering, me, stands ready. The one who accepts the bond, you, gives an offering in return. In our tongue, it is not buying. It is an exchange of fates. Elias stared at her. You're saying you wanted me to do that? Of course, she said, smiling again. You were the one I was waiting for. He blinked. You didn't even know me. Her eyes sparkled. I know enough. You looked at me like I was not an object. You looked at me like I mattered. That caught Elias off guard. He shifted in his seat, not knowing what to say. The ship's computer beeped. The navigation route had locked in. They would be in FTL in minutes. So, Elias said, trying to change the subject, do you know anything about ship systems? Yes, Leora said instantly. My clan trained me in navigation, repairs, and defense. Life oathmates are protectors as much as partners. She leaned forward, fingers moving over the console like she'd done it 100 times. She brought up a star chart, zooming in on a route Elias hadn't considered. This path is faster, she said, pointing at a narrow corridor between asteroid belts. Elias frowned. That's not bad. Risky, but it could save us a day. Risk is less when you have someone watching your back, she said with a small grin. They slipped into FTL. The stars became long streaks, and the hum of the engines deepened. For a while, the cockpit was quiet. Elias kept stealing glances at her, the way she sat upright, the way she seemed both calm and alert. She was nothing like he'd expected when he first saw her in that market. He'd imagined someone timid, maybe desperate. But she carried herself with the confidence of a soldier. You fought back earlier, Elias said finally. That energy, what was it? Leora lifted her palm, and faint golden light danced over her skin. It is Shaylin gift. We can shape life energy into force. I was trained to use it for defense. That's impressive, Elias admitted. You could have taken out those guys without me. Perhaps, she said with a teasing look. But you fought well. My bondmate should be strong, he smirked. Still not sure I am your bondmate. You will be, she said, sounding entirely certain. Hours later, after checking the ship's systems, Elias went to the galley to make a meal. The Wraith wasn't fancy. Small kitchen, cramped halls, narrow sleeping quarters, but it was home. Leora followed him, watching with curiosity as he heated ration packs. Is this human food? She asked. Kind of, Elias said. More like human survival food, not exactly gourmet. She leaned closer to the steaming container. It smells strange. May I? Elias handed her a spoon. She tasted it, and her eyes widened. It is bland. That's putting it nicely, Elias said, chuckling. Here, try this. He pulled out a small jar of spice mix and sprinkled it over the food. She tasted it again, and her expression softened. Better, she admitted. You improve your food like you improve your fate. Elias raised an eyebrow. That's poetic. While they ate, she asked about Earth, oceans, forests, cities. She seemed fascinated by the idea of a planet with so many climates and life forms. In turn, she told him about her home world. The Shaylin lived in crystal cities built into cliffs, overlooking seas that glowed at night. Her people believed in fate bonds, two lives tied together by chance or destiny. To them, traveling unbonded was like wandering without a name. Elias tried to explain that humans didn't have such traditions. She listened, but didn't seem bothered. "That is fine," she said. "You will learn." After the meal, the ship's sensors pinged an alert. Elias frowned and checked the screen. "We've got a ship tailing us. No ID beacon." Leora stood beside him, gaze fixed on the display. "They are following me." "You're sure?" Elias asked. "Yes," she said. "Hunters often work in groups. If they failed once, they will try again." Elias tightened his jaw. "Guess we'd better shake them." The pursuer closed the gap slowly. Elias brought the Wraith into a denser asteroid field, weaving between spinning rocks. Leora watched the radar, calling out positions. 2:00. "Incoming rock," she warned. Elias rolled the ship, sliding past a jagged boulder. "You're good at this." "I was trained to guide," she said, "and to trust my bondmate's skill." The enemy ship kept up, but when Elias cut sharply, between two tumbling asteroids, they clipped one of the rocks and spun out of pursuit. Elias punched the thrusters and blasted clear. He grinned. "Looks like we lost them." "For now," Leora said softly. Later, as the ship cruised through open space, Elias leaned back in his chair. "You know, you could have just told me who was after you." Leora didn't look away from the stars. "Would it have changed what you did?" Elias thought about it. "No," she smiled faintly. "Then it is better you learn in steps. Too much truth at once can weigh down even a strong heart." That answer didn't make him feel any better, but he let it go. When it was time to sleep, Elias pointed her toward the guest cabin. "You can take that room." "It's small, but—" She shook her head. "In my people's tradition, bondmates sleep near each other. It is part of the protection." Elias rubbed the back of his neck. "Yeah, we don't really do that." Her golden eyes softened. "Then I will sit outside your door. That way I can guard you." Elias sighed. "Fine. Just try to actually sleep, all right?" She nodded, but he had the feeling she would spend most of the night listening for trouble. In the quiet hours, while the ship drifted through dark space, Elias found himself thinking about her words, about how she saw their meeting not as luck, but as fate. He had come to that market looking for spare parts. He'd walked away with something far more complicated, and maybe far more valuable. He wasn't sure if that was good or bad. But as he listened to the faint sound of her humming, softly outside his cabin door, he realized something. For the first time in years, he didn't feel entirely alone. The air inside Vera Station's bazaar was thick with smells Elias Mercer couldn't name. Some were pleasant, roasted meats and spiced drinks. Others were not so pleasant, hot oil, alien sweat, and something that smelled like burnt metal. The Ibura human captain moved through the crowded paths between stalls, his boots clanging softly against the metal floor. Around him, dozens of alien species haggled, argued, and called out to customers. Tall insectoid merchants clicked their mandibles over shining gemstones. Four-armed reptilians waved mechanical gadgets in the air. Small fur-covered creatures ran between people's legs carrying trays of steaming food. Elias kept one hand on the strap of his satchel and the other close to his sidearm. He wasn't here for sightseeing. He needed parts for his ship, the Silver Wraith. She'd taken a bad hit in an asteroid field last week, and without repairs, they wouldn't survive the next jump. As he scanned the stalls, his eyes caught something strange. A brightly lit archway ahead, marked with glowing symbols, had a small crowd gathered in front of it. The air there smelled different, a mix of perfume and some kind of sweet smoke. A sign above the arch flashed in the station's trade language. "Companions, for bond or service." Elias frowned. He had heard of such places before. He didn't like them. Still, curiosity tugged at him, and he thought maybe they might have translators or local guides for hire. That was, after all, a kind of service. He stepped closer. Inside, there were display platforms, each one with a single figure standing on it. They were of different, alien races, tall, short, furry, scaled, feathered, all dressed in bright robes or armor-like ceremonial clothes. A thin, green-skinned merchant with silver eyes approached Elias. "Welcome, human," the merchant said with a smile that looked too practiced. "Looking for a loyal companion, trained for service, pleasure, and absolute devotion?" Elias's frown deepened. "I'm not here for that. Just looking." The merchant didn't seem to believe him. "Look, then, see the quality of what we offer." Elias's gaze moved from one figure to the next, until it stopped. She stood on the third platform to his left, small compared to most of the others, perhaps just under his shoulder height, with smooth, pale skin that shimmered faintly under the lights. Her hair was a cascade of fine strands that glowed faintly, like the edge of a sunrise. Her large golden eyes were fixed straight ahead, but there was no fear in them. No shame either. Instead, she looked almost proud. Her clothing was simple but elegant. A soft, cream-colored tunic with silver thread patterns and a thin circlet of crystal around her head. For a reason he couldn't explain, Elias stopped. "Walking." "Ah," the merchant said, following his gaze. "You have good eyes. That one is Leora of the Shaylin, extremely rare. She has completed the sacred training of her people. Loyal, skilled, intelligent, and beautiful, is she not?" Elias folded his arms. "What's she doing here?" "She offers herself," the merchant said smoothly. "As a bondmate. She will serve and protect her chosen partner for life. It is a great honor for the buyer." The words serve and buyer made Elias's stomach tighten. "Sounds like slavery to me." The merchant tilted his head. "In some species' view, perhaps. But for her, it is destiny. Without a bond, she cannot return to her home. The Shaylin believe an unbonded adult is incomplete." Elias looked at Leora again. She met his gaze this time. Her lips curved slightly, upward, a small, knowing smile. He wasn't sure why, but the thought of leaving her here felt wrong. Maybe she wanted this. But what if she didn't? What if she was just trained to say so? "How much?" Elias asked suddenly. The merchant's smile widened. "For her, the price is high. 10,000 credits. "That's insane," Elias said. But even as he spoke, he was already calculating his remaining funds. He had just enough if he used his emergency stash. He thought about the parts his ship needed. He thought about the danger of getting stranded. But then he thought about her, standing here, waiting for some stranger to buy her. "Fine," Elias said through his teeth. 10,000. But she walks out with me now." The merchant's silver eyes glittered. "Of course, Captain." Minutes later, Elias found himself leading Leora out of the archway, a small metallic band now clasped lightly around her wrist, an ownership marker according to the merchant. Elias planned to remove it as soon as he could. Once they were clear of the crowd, Elias stopped and turned to her. "Listen, Leora, right? I didn't buy you to own you. You're free. You can go wherever you want." She tilted her head, golden eyes studying him. Then, to his surprise, she laughed, a soft, melodic sound. "Free?" she said, voice smooth and musical. "Captain, you misunderstand. I am yours now. By my people's law, you are my chosen." Elias blinked. "Your what?" "My chosen. My life partner. My protector. The one I serve and stand beside until the stars burn out," she said with complete certainty. "You have fulfilled my life's purpose. I am honored." "That's not what I had in mind," Elias muttered. Her smile only widened. "Then you are humble too. The fates were right to lead me to you." Before he could argue, the sound of a shout came from behind them. Elias turned to see three rough-looking aliens pushing through the crowd, eyes fixed on Leora. "Stay close," he said quickly, moving forward. Leora matched his pace, her steps light and sure. The aliens quickened their approach. Elias turned, down a side corridor, hoping to lose them. "Friends of yours?" he asked. "They are hunters," she said calmly. "They wish to claim me for themselves, but they are too late. I am already bound to you." "That's not exactly reassuring," Elias muttered, hand brushing his sidearm. The footsteps behind them grew louder. Elias picked up the pace, weaving through a tangle of pipes and cargo crates until they reached an open loading bay. The three pursuers stepped into the light. They were tall, armored, and armed with blunt shock sticks. Elias sighed. "All right, fine. Guess we're doing this." The first alien swung, and Elias ducked, driving his fist into the attacker's gut. The second came from the side, but Elias kicked a crate into his legs, sending him stumbling. The third raised his shock stick toward Leora, and that was when Elias saw something unexpected. Leora's hands glowed. In a blink, a ripple of golden light shot from her palms, slamming into the alien's chest and knocking him backward into a wall. The fight ended as quickly as it began. The three groaning attackers scrambled away, muttering threats in a language Elias didn't know. Elias turned to Leora, wide-eyed. "What was that?" She smiled sweetly. "Protection. It is my duty to keep my chosen safe." He shook his head. "You are not what I expected." "That is good," she replied. "Surprises keep the bond alive." As they walked toward the docking bay, Elias realized this was going to be more complicated than he thought. He'd only meant to get her out of that market. Now, she was acting like she belonged with him forever. And worse, he wasn't sure how much he wanted to argue.